All right. Hey, welcome everybody to the Axe Academy live Axe Cast webinar with my friend, Mr. Timothy Eldred, and the alone epidemic that is plaguing many of us, many of you. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to offer a bunch of solutions, all centered around this amazing idea, this amazing revelation that Timm has, that God has really given him. And at the same time, I think a solution for this issue that we're talking about all month at the Axe Academy called suicide. Timm Eldred is a friend. He is an author. He is a speaker. He's a leader. He is part Irish for the amount of time that he actually goes to that place. But everyone, I want you to meet my friend, Mr. Timm Eldred. Timm, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, preferably in 2 minutes or less.
Well, it's hard to do. Eric, good to see you as always. All that is true. And I like it when people say nice things about me. So thanks about that. I'm a husband. That's important to say. And because my wife's probably watching, and I'm father of two amazing adult sons who I hope, Eric, I've taught them to swing away, but I look forward to them learning a bit from you as well. I continue to pastor and write. My passion above everything is releasing the potential of the next generation. And I listened to your intro to the Axe Academy, and I wish when I was your age, and you probably do as well, because that's why you started Axe, that someone would have done that for you. And I know people poured into you, but there was a lot more room to grow. And so that's what I spend my life doing. I think that's why you and I enjoy each other's company, or tolerate each other's company, or whatever it is we do. And so today I'm home in the state of Michigan, and glad to be home for a couple of weeks before being back on the road. And I'm really excited to be at the Axe Academy with you today.
Amazing. I know that half of that is true, that you said that you like me. The other half of it is...
It's a paid endorsement.
Right. Maybe, possibly. But anyway, all of you that are tuning in on Facebook and watching this pre-recorded in the Axe Academy, on the back side of the dashboard, or if you're watching this little bit on Instagram TV or wherever you are tuning in, hey, welcome to tonight's AxeCast webinar. We do these every month. We also do a couple other things at the Axe Academy. And I just want to take just 2 minutes of your time just to sort of peel back the layers of what it is that the Axe Academy does and why we do it. As Timm said, I do have a lot of people that have poured into my life, but what I really lacked at times was a place that I could go and get sometimes my own questions answered in a safe environment. Sometimes when you get to certain places, you can't ask certain questions. And I think that can also kind of keep us guarded. And at the same time, I needed a map to take me from point A to point B, rather than just learn everything or a little bit about everything, if you will. So the Axe Academy exists for a generation that really wants to make their life count. We sharpen your life in 7 specific areas. I'm not going to bore you with those areas, but you can read about it on the axeacademy.com. There's 7 sides of an axe when you're going to sharpen it. And we take these 7 areas, Christ teachings and culture engagement and creative power. And we hone all of these angles of our lives really to put all of the content in these different buckets, if you will, or these different angles to sharpen you. It's not about you becoming me or you becoming Timm. It's about you becoming you. There's a passage in Kings where this axe head sinks in the water. It's very obscure. These guys are building this church, essentially, or a place for the prophets, and Elijah's axe head sinks in the water. And he freaks out. And Timm, you may or may not remember the story, but I forgot it completely until I'm reading this. Elijah goes and throws this stick, and the axe head floats.
Right.
And the guy's freaking out because it's a borrowed axe head. And the revelation that really came with that for me, for all of you, is that if you borrow someone's tools to build what God has for you to make, you'll need the authentic eventually. You can't borrow anointing. You can't borrow gifts. You can't borrow what isn't yours to make what God has to put into your hand. You have to emerge. You have to be sharpened. Your voice has to come out. Your passions and interests and callings and careers and roles and all of the things that is you. I mean, yeah, there's nothing true that's new underneath the sun except you, your fingerprint, everything that's being made into the moment. I mean, it's always a conglomerate of the new. And if I can help equip you with the axe so you can build into blaze what God has for you, that would be worth fighting for. So we've got two amazing sponsors that have come alongside of this this vision, if you will. And I just want to take a second just to tell you all about two ways that you can get involved in the world and how you can be sharpened because of this. The first is through our partner called ShareWord Global. ShareWord.org is really the website you would need to go to check it out. And what they do is they bring the Word of God all over the world in printed form. This is important because we live on bread, but we also live on bread. There's this physical reality and a spiritual reality for us all. Like we have bread and we have the bread of life. We have bread and we have the thing that Jesus is referencing. So there's this spiritual food and there's this physical food, and shareword.org gives people this spiritual food. They bring the gospel all over the world, and it is unbelievable who is waiting for something as simple as a Bible. I got a friend named Samson. He filled up these binders, 25,000 names per binder in India, and he's got 10 of these binders full of people that are just waiting for a Bible. For $5, you can send a Bible to the other side of the earth. It's unbelievable what they're doing. Check out shareword.org. Feed1.com. I love Feed1. It's $10 a month. It feeds a child in the developing world for the entire month. I'm going to say that one more time. $10 feeds a child where they work in the developing world for the entire month. And if you're like me, you go into the refrigerator and you look in there. Tim, have you ever done this? And it's like, it's full of food and you're like,
oh, there's nothing to eat, man.
And yeah, and you order a pizza. And as comical as that is, there's nothing that we want in that moment, but 23,000 plus children die in a hospital bed today or a ditch or their mother's arms of a preventable disease called hunger. And for two $5 Subway foot-long sandwiches, you can feed a child for an entire month. Mother Teresa says it best: if you can't feed 100, just feed one. So I would encourage you who are watching, who want to do something about people that are starving, check out feed1.com and feed a child in the developing world for $10. All this month at the Acts Academy, we've been talking about suicide prevention. The Acts cast for this month in the private extended Acts episode, I can't wait for you to listen to it. I talked to a nutritionist in California. Her name is Samantha Gilbert, and she really came at this whole perspective of suicide, asking me or asking the world, not how's your feelings, but how's your food? And she goes through the science behind people that have zinc deficiency or over deficiency, this thing called pyrrole disorder, this thing called over or under methylation. Kurt Cobain was a methylator. He was lacking nutrients that he could have got from the food that God put on this earth, and a whole bunch of other things that she just rattles through with copper toxicity and pyrrole disorder. And my head was spinning. I've never really asked the question when I'm dealing with the topic of suicide, how's your food? I've always approached it as, how are you feeling? And so she ripped the lid off of the science behind how can you figure out if you're feeling the way that you're feeling, or if you're dealing someone with those thoughts, tendencies, let's even say attempts. There could be something at a nutritional level that is causing a chemical reaction or imbalance or overbalance that's affecting them in monumental ways. Antidepressants are actually on an overmethylator, I believe she said, are really like kerosene and gas. They're just in matches. It's like dumping fuel on the fire. It like the science she has in this. So you need to check this out on how's your food, not just how your feelings, with the extended Acts episode available where all podcasts are, and then the private one for students and supporters. And if you're not, use the code and you can listen to it and then, delete your account or whatever the case is. We hope that you stay around and grow, sharpen your axe, become all that you can be, which you may or may not need me to do that. But the point is check that out because of how she does this. Other side of the coin is my friend Timothy Eldred. I mean, this guy has changed thousands of lives by literally ripping back the idea of this epidemic that we are all feeling this sometimes when it comes to isolation, being alone. And he wrote this book that I absolutely love, that I think could change the course of the earth, called Alone Sucks. Samantha's asking, how's your food? Tim really is looking at how are you feeling, and how are we feeling, and how are we reacting, and what do we need to do about this? And so I couldn't really approach the issue of suicide with just one side of the coin, because there's even possibly multiple angles. But Timothy's an expert in this, and so he wrote this book. And one of the things I want to just ask Tim right out of the get-go, Tim, when it comes to the idea of being alone, or maybe the premise of the book, can you just tell me, and everyone that's watching, what is the primary reason, that you even wrote the book in the first place?
Eric, I've been struggling with this issue for 20 plus years. And truthfully, I've been struggling with it my entire life. I just didn't know it. And, when you find yourself burying or killing the best part of you to hide your pain, it takes a long time to unpack that. And it took me a long time. It took me investigating a lot of aspects of my life, and really then dealing with the lives of students across the world. What a privilege, but what a burden. And it's a blessing, but it's a burden at the same time to see pain that students are facing that could be solved if we would be transparent. So I started writing this. I outlined it for months, literally, and a couple years. And I started to put together a manuscript that was really just information.
Right.
And about halfway through it, in the middle of the summer, I knew the Lord was telling me that this is not the content. And so I called my publisher and said, I want to change the book. I know we're only a couple months away from print. And then I talked to my wife, and because I needed permission, because when you put yourself out there, you put the people out there who love you most as well to share your story. And so I guess, to answer the question is it's the same reason I do youth work, because I want every young person to know who they are, to understand their identity, and quit hiding and masking and disguising or ignoring pain, frustration, confusion. And so when I look at that, and I look, what is the core reason? Is there a core reason? Right. And I'm not saying this is a panacea, but there is a root. Even when you look at what Samantha's research is saying about food, does that exacerbate a bigger issue or a core issue that we've known from the very beginning? And I have to give the Lord credit for giving me the insight to write Alone Sucks. But as a pastor who counsels, a youth worker, a dad, a husband, neighbor, I see pain just like you, man. I see pain every day. And I'm tired of seeing pain that can be prevented. And so it was time. It was just time to quit protecting myself and put myself out there a bit, and not just write about alone, but write about my alone story. Yeah.
And that's what I love about, I guess, the first part of the book, Tim, is that you really peel back the layers of who you are and why this matters for people to listen, in a sense where it's kind of like, you don't know how I feel. And at the same time, yeah, if you read these pages, he does know how you feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there was no way to let people understand that I understand.
Right.
I've been you. And
Right.
you may think you can't relate to me. You're older than me. You're younger than me. You're a different gender than me. You're a different color than me. A different economic status than me. No, inside, we are all the same. Inside, we deal with the same issue.
Right.
And we shouldn't be surprised because God told us the issue from the very beginning. He said in Genesis, it is not good for man to be alone. And he wasn't talking about man as in Adam as much as he was talking about human as in us relationally. We are designed for relationship.
Yeah. And so to kind of encapsulate, in a sense, when you're looking at suicide and the rate that it has really taken off in our nation alone here in the States, there are people that'll be watching this from really all over the world. Speaking statistically now in the U.S., suicide rates are really at a all-time high.
And just the last 10 years, Eric, and you know this, but up 72% just with teens. And so the number is even actually higher with the elderly in the last decade.
So the rate of this is increasing so full. And what I love about what you offer up to people that are struggling with suicide thoughts, let's just say opposition, depression, anxiety, all of those key factors that really circle like wolves in a person's heart. You're really saying the root is isolation, the root or the cause of a lot of all of these things that stem up from this tree. If you could envision in your mind at the base of the tree, it's being alone, and then the tree grows out of that soil, and we deal with suicide and depression and anxiety as the fruit on this tree that's growing in the soil of being alone. Is that a good assessment visually of what you're saying?
I think you're correct that there's a lot of fruit of alone. I mean, when we deal with the issue of suicide, we're talking about ultimately that fruit that drops from the tree and dies.
Yeah, that's good.
And so maybe if we had to put it in a hierarchy, because suicide is the result of another symptom or multiple symptoms that continue to build upon each other. And so if we start backing up and not dealing necessarily with suicide, because I was having this conversation yesterday when you talk about doing a podcast. And I told a colleague that, man, I could write on suicide and school shootings and tragedy every day. And it's depressing. I want to quit writing on suicide and doing podcasts on suicide and webinars on suicide to start getting back to what are those other symptoms or those other outgrowths from this alone tree that we could cut off first so that we aren't talking about, or at least and I love the way you said that in the intro to this on Facebook, we can change this.
Yeah.
But we need to change it by backing up to the beginning and dealing with all those symptoms that come from this root cause.
Okay, so everyone who's tuning in right now that's dealing with someone with, this topic of suicide, depression, anxiety, these are all fruits, or let's just say, surface, what do we want to call them, causes. And there's a virus that's causing this. It's all symptoms of a greater pain, and the pain is isolation and this lie that we're alone, or that we're different, or we're unreachable.
I don't matter. I don't matter. No one loves
all
me.
These symptoms show up, like for instance, the person who's struggling with self-harm. The knife and the blade is an action of the symptom. There is a cause for that knife in that hand in the first place. And really, what I love about this, Timm, is you're offering up a solution to the cause, not the symptom. That's why you don't write about suicide and school shootings and all these surface behavior pieces. You're really looking at what is the house or the foundation that's holding these things up. It's like when I'm in a public school, I'm always looking at an assembly and a message for students, not from the perspective of, don't smoke and don't drink and don't text and drive and all these like rules, and really looking at the values that dictate those rules. It's that thing behind the thing underneath the whole, it's the floor underneath the carpet, if you will. Yes. And so your own alone story, I want to comment on that real quick, just for people that may not be thinking that this is such a profound insight, because I believe, like you believe, that the reason why suicide is up as much as it is in the last 10 years is because we are living the most connected and yet the most privately devoid lives we have ever lived on the face of the earth.
Right. That's right.
We have these things in our hands that are called smartphones that arguably aren't making us smarter. But what this does is it allows us to never be alone in our minds, and be everywhere all the time, all knowing, everywhere all the time. This is akin to the Tower of Babel. There's this ancient story about the Tower of Babel where people wanted to be everywhere and all the time. And I have a great friend that says it like this: our human frame can't hold the weight of being everywhere and all the time. And you start seeing this cue of how we're so connected, but yet so isolated from each other. It's because the human experience has continued to be eroded as the human experience has gone the way of the buffalo, in a sense, with some of the underbelly of technology. I'll even make my case stronger for why I believe you're right on the point for this whole thing called suicide because of being alone. If you drive through my neighborhood right now, it's a subdivision. Everybody's got a minivan, including me. I remember when I bought a minivan, and I was like, I'm that guy.
Yeah, turned in your man card.
I have become that guy. If Prius made a minivan, no. So I remember doing that and being a part of this subdivision with minivans, and my garage is attached to my door. You drive in my door, you shut the garage, you go in your house, you go out on the deck in the back. Okay? This is how my house is constructed. This is how many people's homes are constructed. Tim, I don't know how your house is constructed. You've never invited me over, but I'm guessing your garage is attached.
Yep, I drive in.
Do you have a deck or a hot tub on the back?
On the back, there's a deck and a hot tub where no one can see me. Yeah.
Ooh. Hey, everybody. Next AxeCast, we're going to Timm's. We're all going to get... John, put his address up right now. No, I'm kidding. But what I was going to say is think about like the neighborhoods from the 50s that you drive through.
Yeah, front porch.
The garage is detached.
Yeah.
There's a front porch. There was no back patio. It was this whole different, even architecturally, you drive into the garage. You have to get physically out of your car, and you actually use the front door. It's no longer just this decor thing. And you sit on the front porch, or you go to everywhere everyone was on the street. And our public and private lives, even the way that we have built our homes and built structures around ourselves, I think really has contributed to this epidemic of being alone. Now, Tim, do you want to talk to that? But I want to ask you, why do you think this issue of aloneness is greater for some ages? You said the word students a lot. Why do you think it's greater for some ages and others not? Do you have a thought there?
Well, I think there are some developmental times in your life where adolescence in particular, when you're in the process of discovery of who am I, what am I good at?
Right.
Adolescence is tough. It's always been tough.
Right.
And then the other element of that is, obviously as people age, they watch their generation, their friends, their spouse pass away. And so they everything is minus, minus
Right.
this person, minus this person, certain things they can't do anymore. And so that's depressing, and it can be mentally debilitating. And yet, I don't know, Eric, that there's an age that doesn't deal with aloneness.
Yeah.
I look at the social media phenomenon, which I love to hate it, and I really particularly hate it. And so I'm glad tonight we can use it for this kind of, communication. But because
Right.
we're everywhere, we're nowhere. And sometimes when we're nowhere, we feel like nobody.
Yeah.
And what we're really doing.
That's
and
good, Tim.
when you look at posts.
Say that one more time. Say that one more time.
Well, when you're everywhere, you're really nowhere. And when you're nowhere, you feel like nobody.
I want you to say that one more time and slower, because people got to sink that into their spirit. Say it again.
Yeah. When you have the ability to be everywhere at any time, what ends up happening is you are actually not present anywhere, so you are nowhere. And when you are nowhere and alone, you feel like nobody.
Oh, man, that is so true when it comes to just that slice of social media. And yes, we're on Facebook, we're on using, an idea of social media. But I think also when you look at digital forms of communication, I think it's a lot like a hammer. You can build a house for that person with a hammer, or you can, not to be crass, you can really kill another human being quite easily with just a hammer. It really depends on what you do with it in your hand. And I think that social media is really, no different, where people start measuring their self-worth. They start being a nobody because they're nowhere.
Unfortunately, social media gives everybody a voice without any training or license to use that tool.
With no responsibility.
No responsibility whatsoever. And so this issue of aloneness, the opposite, I guess I would say, of alone is the ability to be present. And if you are nowhere with nobody at any one time because you're trying to be everywhere, who are you being present with? Because only presence removes aloneness. I mean, you could swap the word relationship for that. Intimacy, accountability, belonging, whatever it may be, but it's the act or the art of being present with somebody, and we're so busy.
Yeah.
Because of the global issues we deal with, we're so busy hoping somebody notices me that what we're missing is that we're not actually noticing anybody else most of the time. And so we are in this, sadly, we are in a vicious cycle. And when I released the book and then released the curriculum that goes with the book, one of my frustrations, and again, I was having this conversation yesterday, I was just ranting to a friend yesterday in Alabama, that why will we not deal with this topic? Why do we deal with the end result, the symptom, but we never get to the core? Why is it so painful? And why are we shocked that it's so painful when we go back and we see from the very beginning, the first revelation God ever said, revelation, was alone sucks. And that might be hard for some of you to think that God used the word sucks, but, translate that from Genesis 2 to 2018, in some form of Hebrew, it's just not, it's not good.
Yeah.
And so, but it's this vicious cycle. And so we need to talk about the ways we have to break it, because it's breakable. It's absolutely breakable.
Well, okay. So I just want to make sure anyone that's tuning in right now, we're establishing that the rise of suicide, the cause of suicide, and all these other fruits that are on this tree, metaphorically in a hierarchical way, or the fruit dropping from the tree, it's all in the soil of being alone. This is really one of the common denominators, is isolation and this nagging feeling of being alone. And we're not designed to be alone. We're not made to be alone. And yet we bought the lie that we are alone. And God himself, when he creates the earth and he makes the earth, he says it's not good that man should be alone. And then he makes woman. By the way, I love this part of the story, Tim. He puts Adam to sleep, and then all of a sudden Eve wakes up. And this is pre-fig leaf, pre-clothed, by the way. Sorry, this is getting a little PG-13 now. And he sees this lady and he's like, how'd you get here?
Put back to sleep again.
Yeah. And then what I love about that is then God says, and he saw, and now it was very good. If you catch it in scripture, he says it's good And then he says it's very good. And I've always loved that, especially for girls, because the world was just good. And then God says it's not good that man should be alone. And then when women were here, and arguably the premise of your book, when there was community and union, then it became very good. Yeah. And it affects, if you're watching, it affects students, it affects statistically seniors, but then I think it can affect, to your point, Tim, everybody. I'll give you 2 examples before we move into how we can kind of do the greatest thing people can do to alleviate their own feeling of aloneness, and then at the same time, how we can reach out to others so that they don't end up killing themselves. What are some practical, rubber to the road? Another group that I just want to highlight is, like, you think about, well, war veterans or people coming back from combat. They had a band of brothers or sisters, and then they're isolated from them, transplanted back. And you look at, like, the Wounded Warrior Project and the suicide rate among, our servicemen and women, and it's just through the roof.
22 vets a day.
It breaks my heart. I don't even know what to do. Sometimes I'm so overwhelmed with it. And so I've been meeting with, people that are in my community that are vets, and my own nephew, and, like, trying to be the best bridge I can. But that is proof for that, this feeling of community, they're ripped from, and then they're thrust into isolation. In the world that was nothing is new, nothing is like it was, and they're alone. I think about parents with young kids. My wife and I struggle with this a lot, to be honest with you. We sometimes feel like we're on a relational island. We're dealing with our 3 kids, and sometimes we feel like, none of our friends are calling, and we don't have anything planned, and everybody's doing their own thing, and we're just alone, as a couple alone, like as a family unit, we're just kind of like making our way through the day, if you will. And then there's these bright spots where a busy parent has another set of busy parents sort of like lay the drawbridge down of their life, proverbial, and, in an example, and I'm butchering the word, but the point is they put the drawbridge down and they say, hey, come on over to my castle. Let's let our families play together. That all of a sudden, it's like you realize everybody else feels like they're in their own castle, And so you see this nagging feeling across so many demographics of age, life experience, maybe even life situations that perpetuate this negative, nagging feeling of isolation, of being alone, and then that springs up to so many different fruits, and one of them being suicide, which I know we can change. And so, Tim, I want to just ask you as an expert. You work with literally hundreds of thousands of students all over the world through your ministry and organization, Waves. That's student-led youth ministry. I love this. And can you just maybe put a little bit, for those that are tuning in, that are sitting at this Facebook or Instagram or on YouTube, and they're watching clips of this, or they're in the Acts Academy, and they're feeling like they're alone. They're at the bottom of their rope. Some of them maybe have even written their own suicide note, or they're depleted. They're in this isolation state. What are some of the things that they can do to alleviate this lie, to wade through this dark valley? How can you get someone from A to B through the valley of the shadow of alone? What are some of the guideposts along the way?
Well, the same answers are true for those of you who feel like the bottom has dropped out, that no one understands you, and you're just spinning out of control. The same answer that I would encourage you to consider is for those, same as for those who feel like you're healthy right now, but you know somebody. See, we all know somebody. Mm-hmm. And because at one point we will be that somebody.
Right.
But that's one of the reasons we don't want to talk about it, because we're not very good at admitting our weaknesses or our faults, especially in public. But the problem is that most people only have one or two good friends, and they're afraid if they are transparent with them, they will lose that friendship. And so you see why we're in this cycle? So the first thing, and it might sound trite, is that you just need to recognize for 1 second, take a step back and look in the mirror, and say and tell yourself, I'm not alone. There is somebody going through your exact same pain. And most people listening, they know that already. But we get in this self-pity mode, and I understand that self-pity mode. I've been there. That, wow, if I take off my mask and stop pretending and really have to deal with this issue, I don't know what pain is worse.
Right.
Is the pain worse of the infection inside, or ripping the Band-Aid out and squeezing and oozing the pus and pain out of my soul?
Right.
So number one, awareness is the issue, that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And someone else is dealing with the exact same pain that you're going through. That just has to be said, and it's understandable.
Just for a second, because I love that, sort of awareness. If you're out there struggling with this nagging feeling of suicide thoughts, you've written a note. I want you to realize that no matter what you believe or don't believe about Jesus, I believe he was God's son. He came to this earth, lived a perfect life. He died for the reconciliation of us to ourselves, us to God, to really find a way to really be human. And he's coming back again for his church. The Nicene Creed, you can read about it. It's an ancient document. This really sums up my faith very well. But there's also scripture that speaks to the power of words. Proverbs 18:21, I love what it says. Power of life and death is in the tongue. Yeah. And there is something about a word that creates a reality. And so when someone gets married, I want you to think about this. The man or the woman, or in our day and age, there's a number of other, situations that could be happening at that moment. But traditionally, in the definition of marriage, biblically, and my definition of marriage is between a man and a woman being married. And when you look at it from that perspective, you have these two people, and they say, do you take, and do you take? And they say, I do. And then there's this new reality called a marriage. This exchange of vows and these words before witnesses and before God is really the practice of this sacrament of the wedding, of this. But what is it really? At the end of the day, it's words creating a new reality.
Eric, let's take it one step deeper. Instead of, when I perform a lot of weddings, and I quit
as a singer, or as a pastor. I just want to know: Are you like Timothy Eldred? Wait a second. Listen, are you like Timothy Eldred, the wedding singer, and we don't know it? And you're like moonlighting out there,
chapel in Las Vegas.
Do you really want to hurt me?
99. Come on, man. We'll hook you up.
You really want to make me cry?
I should have been in that movie.
You should have been. You would have been a perfect Boy George. Okay, moving on.
Well, instead of using the words "I do," years ago I started using the words "I will," and as a matter of fact, I teach during a wedding ceremony about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane the night before he died, which is not a bad metaphor, and to say, not my will, but your will. And, because there's going to be some things in this marriage that are tough. And so it's not what I want to do. It's I will. I'm going to will it. And so, God, whatever and so you're speaking things into existence. So I want to camp on this just for a second about your power of words when people are feeling alone. There are times you just need to say, and you need to, and this is a trained response, because the mind actually controls the brain, not the other way around. The brain and the mind are not the same thing scientifically. The mind is the thought process, and so you have to retrain. And it takes sometimes 63 days. You should pick up a book by Dr. Caroline Leaf from South Africa. She has multiple books on the way that you think. So I'm thinking this week, as we're getting ready for this conversation, there's a young man that has been texting me for a while, and he's been doing well up until Monday.
Okay.
And so he has been suicidal. He has written his note, from all I know, and then he was recovering and getting himself mentally in a better place. And Monday he begins to cut again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent him a quick text, and I said, you actually have more power and control than you think you do. So let me help you rethink. Let's start by using words about what I say about myself. Because until I start saying something different about me,
right,
nobody else is going to, because it's awareness, and then the first step, and then the second step is actually the simple action of what I begin to think about myself, which is difficult, but if I can begin to train my brain to say something positive, it might just be that one moment that slows me down, that I don't need that pill. I'm not going to end my life. I'm not going to do some destructive behavior. I'm not going to self-harm, and I'm not going to harm somebody else. But it begins with thoughts.
Right. So if you're out there and you're struggling, and we'll get to those of you that are dealing with people that are struggling, but if you're struggling, this first, maybe step 1 and 2, Tim, really kind of come to the place of, I want you to get in front of a mirror tonight, and arguably from that doctor whose book you read. And if you're an ACTS student or subscriber, I'll have Tim text me the book and where he got it, and I'll send out an e-blast to all of the ACTS students on where you can get this resource, this idea of 63 days and the brain science behind it, because I'm sure that rat hole is deep. But if you're struggling with suicide, I want you to go tonight in front of a mirror, and I want you to look in front of that mirror, and I want you to look into your own eyes, and with every ounce of strength that you have, through tears, even if you feel like you're lying to yourself, I want you to say the words, I am not alone. I am not alone. Because at some point your mind has been lying to you. You've been deceived that you are. And if the enemy can get you alone, the enemy can take over for your life. There is a God who wants you to go and to have has a great purpose. And he wants to have a relationship with you. And there's also an enemy who seeks the earth like a roaring lion. And if you've ever watched the Discovery Channel, that moment of the nature show where the guy walks in and he's like, there he is, the lion about to kill the wildebeest, with the Australian accent. The lion jumps into the herd, and that one little wildebeest that veers off, that lion, and all the lionesses, rather, the lion doesn't hunt, the lionesses, the ladies do the work, let's be honest. And they go over and they go after that one that is alone. Isolation is where the enemy can get you the quickest. And so I want you to start with the words, start with the power of that thought. Start there tonight. Look in the mirror, and as funny and as cliche and as like, this feels like self-help, Oprah Winfrey, I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm going to believe it, and then Maserati in the garage. Now, from what you think this is, and let's really call it for what it is. It's speaking truth that you're not alone. It's telling the truth for the first time in a long time, audibly, with words that have power over life and death, to change your thoughts that'll change your actions. If you're struggling with suicide, depression, anxiety, all of these things, use the gate that is your mouth tonight in the mirror, and just tell yourself, for the first time in a long time, even if you don't believe it, multiple times if you want to, that you are not alone. Your pain is the same as mine and as Tim's. The details is just what makes it different, and we're all in this together, and you're not alone. Tim, talk a little bit about thoughts. Are there a couple other numbers, if you will, that you're thinking about how someone who is in that valley of the shadow of the alone, as like I call it, that they can journey through? You got words and thoughts. And now, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I would add to, I love that, to stand in front of the mirror tonight and stand in front of the mirror tomorrow and know, and I'm just going to warn you now, just it would be foolish of me not to tell you that you're going to have to play that over and over and over and over and over and over again, because someone's going to continue to lie to you. He's got a name. It's Satan. He's an enemy. He wants to destroy you. The very lie he told from the very beginning is the same one he's telling you. When you get done telling yourself that, before you go to bed or first thing tomorrow morning, take out a piece of paper and start writing the things you wish somebody would say about you. Not the things you believe about yourself, because that might be really difficult. The things you wish somebody would say about you. If you could dream the greatest compliments and see yourself through some beautiful, spectrum of gorgeous, perfect, whatever it might be, inside and out, begin to make a list. And then when you stand in front of the mirror, start making I am statements. Mm-hmm. Begin with simple ones like, a biblical one, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Mm-hmm. I am beloved. I am funny, Right. I am good looking. I'm a nice person. You just keep naming them, kicking them off, fill the page and start saying those about you, because if you don't say them about you, you're never going to behave in the way that someone else is going to say them about you.
Yeah. I think the power of words cannot be understated for people that are feeling alone, isolated, depressed, filled with anxiety. There's a lot of other factors that we can talk about, from food and addiction and chemical imbalance, and the list is long here. But the isolation of aloneness is really a lie that is built on a foundation of words. And if you're going to journey through this valley of the shadow of the alone, you're going to need to start using those words as weapons for your own freedom, not for your own death. I think that people can be their own worst enemy, in a sense.
Yeah.
And you got to start using those words about how you're saying those, like that soundtrack of your head, and what is it playing? Timm, I want to ask you, because you're an expert in this, what would you say to a student or an adult or someone who's struggling with this at such a level that it's hard for them to look in the mirror, and just even muster out the practical I'm not alone, and start to battle that back? Sometimes when you get so far in the dark, it's hard to even feel your way out. And where can they go? What could they do?
Well, I'm going to say, first of all, before we miss it, Eric, in the midst of this, that there are times, and let's not pretend that, it's just not about self-help, thoughts here. Some people need some real medical and professional help. Let's just go back to the doctor you cited earlier, that it may be a food issue, maybe a chemical issue, maybe another issue. It could be, some kind of genetic issue. And so if you think that's you, seek help. And I know that's hard. That's what Eric's asking. If I just am so deep in my hole, I don't know where to begin. Mm-hmm. Then it's so. Here's one thing that I've been learning, is that before I can sometimes say positive things about myself, I have to admit the things I don't like about myself. Mm. I can't just say, I can't mask. There's four things that we do when we're alone, and the first one is that we either blame other people. That never helps anything, because maybe it's some extenuating circumstances, but that's not going to change anything. You can't change something in the past. You have to move forward. You can't blame, and you can't mask. And so sometimes by saying in the mirror or writing things down before we've actually acknowledged, I'm really struggling with the microphone in this podcast, Eric. Sorry, dude.
Sorry, buddy.
It's all right. And
you're alone. That's part of why you need some help.
So I need help. Sometimes we have to acknowledge, because I said this in the book, you can't fix what you don't admit.
Right.
So if you're that person that feels like there's no hope for me, say that out loud. That's okay. Say that out loud. At least admit where you are. That is the first step before you can even say something positive.
All right. So let me just kind of look at this from another perspective. For those of us that know someone who is in that place of isolation, who has revealed some of those sufferings, It's hard sometimes. I personally, I think I got a whole program dedicated to this through Painting Hope that I do for students about sharing their story. Because, I mean, teachers, educators, principals, superintendents, moms and dads, we're not mind readers. And if people don't ask for help, we can't really give any help a lot of times. You got to ask for help. You got to share your story. And so sometimes people silently suffer, but those moments where you have a hunch that someone's dealing with depression, anxiety, suicide thoughts, tendencies, all in the bedrock or all in the soil of this alone, root system. What are some practical ways that you found, maybe one, maybe two, that a parent could reach out to, their son or daughter, that a youth worker could reach out to that student who's dealing with suicide, the friend who knows someone who's cutting and filled with anxiety and in that place, on that path, if you will, to taking their own life? What are some of the people that are, at the place where they're maybe at a mountaintop or maybe at a perspective where they don't feel like they're, crumbling, and they want to help other people in a real way? What are some tangible ways that people can do that you found?
Well, the first one is the most important, and it can't be overstated, and that's time. There's what I have found, regardless of who I'm working with, is that the way for me to communicate to you that you are valuable, that you are loved, that you're cherished, is I can't do that through a text. I can't do that through a Snapchat or a phone call even. I need to we're a selfish society. I'm selfish. I'm selfish with my time. So I have to.
Yeah, there's people that are probably looking at the clock going, man, this is supposed to go an hour. It's 8:01.
I have to take time out of my day when I notice that person. I might notice somebody who's despondent or dragging their bottom lip, or it seems like they're a mess. They might be the class clown. They might be the person who's just buying and spending and posting and putting all things out there for everyone to see. Those are all signs that someone is just saying, notice me. So let's just cut to the chase. When you notice someone's behavior that is begging for attention, negative or positive, give it to them. Give it to them. But give it to them in a positive way, where you are investing time in them. Yeah. Time is not a note card. Time is not, well, I'm going to, make a quick phone call. Time is I'm going to swing by. But I have to say this because I have a friend right now who is going through some serious depression. They're on medication, and they just changed the medication again. And every time that people reach out to him, he shuts them out, and he shuts them out, and he shuts them out. And so I'm having this conversation right now, like, what else do we do? He won't let us in his life. And the response is, we just continue to push and push and push. We don't shove, but we push just far enough where he knows that I'm always available. I'm always there. And it might be for him to reply on his own time, but I don't give my time first, and I can't give him an opportunity to reciprocate when he's ready.
Closing in that proximity, offering up the currency of our life, time.
Yeah. Well, you can't remove aloneness without together, right?
Yeah.
And together doesn't exist without time.
Yeah, and I want to say something too, for those of you that work with students, for those of you that are moms and dads, for those of you that have humans in your life that will deal with the mountains and valleys and the lie of aloneness. I did a big research of just paper for seminary, and then I did a podcast on it too, an AXCast actually, about the table and about the importance of eating together and some of these other attributes. But one thing I would encourage all of you that are working with students is that when you're with a student or when you're with your kids, when you're with your family, when you're with, whoever it may be that could be suffering silently or could be suffering, very publicly, take this device and shut it off or put it on mute and put it away. Leave it out of your presence or proximity. And so you are there 100% geographically and mentally when you are giving this time and this currency of your life. Because we can actually be in a room with someone and we can be mentally absent when we're connected to this device. I'll even throw a little bit of a life hack out, something that I've done for my life, for the time and the quality of it with people that I'm with. There's a little SIM card, like a button you can push out, and you can pull the SIM card out. And I got this Nokia candy bar phone. And when I totally want to fall off the grid, you remember the Nokia phone that like you had, and it was like Snake and calculator, and like the battery would fall out, and you'd be like, where? And you'd find it, and then, oh yeah, it's fine. And then it would work just perfect. It wasn't made of glass. But I actually use that phone at different intervals of my life, or when I'm with my wife, or when I'm with my kids, or other people in my life that I'm counseling or discipling or interacting with, because there's something about the proximity and the removal of all the distraction that makes that time so much richer. It tells that person across the dinner table, you're the only thing that matters right now. The rest of the world is available by the flip of a thumb, but you're who I want to be with. And there's something said about that as a lifeline to people that are struggling with suicide or depression. Timm, can you give me just briefly, I want to end this around 8:15 Central, so this whole piece goes about an hour. So in these closing sort of moments, can you just tell maybe everybody who's watching, hey, what do you hope that this book will accomplish? And then maybe just your takeaway, if you will. And I got one closing thought for everybody that's out there that happened for me today, this profound moment I just want to share.
You know,
Timothy Eldred, everybody. Alone Sucks. Check it out where books are sold. It'll change your world. It'll change this world. Anyway, we're still going. Okay, we're back at her. Do you have audio?
I have audio.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I switched mics tonight, just, because I thought that would be better. I was wrong. See, I can admit that. I'm not alone.
Yeah. Write that down on your notepad.
Yeah, next time.
I love it.
So the takeaway, I say at the end of the book that if I could get anything, if this book produced anything, if this topic produced anything, if every talk we do on this or tour produces anything, is that we create an empathy epidemic. I like to define empathy as sympathy in action. Mm. Sympathy is a feeling, So Eric, go ahead, Eric.
Did everybody hear that? Empathy is defined as sympathy in action.
Yeah.
Empathy is not just this idea Timm says in this book, and I love this. I want you to grab a hold of this, because empathy is what's going to be the bridge that's going to be the mortar or the path that will get you into someone else's castle in life, so that you can invade their space, close that proximity, and be that lifeline for someone. It's going to be the key or the road is empathy. But empathy is not just these isolated thoughts or ideas. It's a lot like love. Empathy is sympathy and action. There is rubber to the road here. There are steps and a reality that empathy must embody. So I want you all to grab that, because you got to get a hold of that from Timm's perspective. And I agree with it, that empathy is sympathy in action. Okay, Timm, keep going.
Well,
Sympathy
it produces the with factor that you were talking about.
Right.
Empathy is the difference between, I feel bad that your cat died, and, hey, I'm sorry. You want to go cat shopping, right? Or whatever it might be. And so, but it means I have to take action, which I've got to take time. And so what have we created? This empathy epidemic, where our epidemic was not aloneness, our epidemic was not loneliness, that we turned that around by simply remembering that there's somebody in our world that is as much pain as you might be in right now, and I'm not taking away from that for any listener, but there is somebody on your path tomorrow or this week whose pain is worse. And if you understand pain, then you wouldn't want anybody else to feel what you're feeling. So if you want to get rid of your own pain, then you've got to help somebody else get rid of theirs. That's what's so paradoxical about aloneness. If you don't want to feel alone, then help somebody else not feel alone by helping somebody else eliminate their pain, their problem, their hurt, their despair, their despair, their anxiety. You're going to immediately begin to cure your own as well. If you wallow in your own aloneness, if you wallow in your own pain, and you don't express empathy to somebody else for the feelings that you know how exhausting and depressing and life-sucking they can be, you're going to stay right there. We're all going to stay right there.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about how the God that created the universe allowed this amazing thing to emerge called the church. I was reading today about basically post-Roman Empire, long story short, the church really was about really this community of people. And so I love that it was this at its base, or its like birth, it came out of people walking through life that needed help, all around the answer that's found in Christ, both from our spiritual condition and then in the reality of the world where their needs were being met in the physical, I guess, application of that relationship. I love that about the church. And I'll just simply say this, people in this empathy epidemic, my prayer is that Christians, those of us that are followers of Jesus, and if you're not, I don't know what you're waiting for. God has absolutely got a plan, and he is amazing. Not everything happens for a reason, but he's the one that can make reasons for anything. And I want to see the church become a instrument of hope around this topic and start talking about it, and create this empathy epidemic where we are caring for each other's needs, even though we have needs ourselves. I hope that people really grab a hold of this. In fact, I'll just simply say, if you want to connect with Timm personally, you can check him out on Instagram and his website. But if you just hashtag a photo or a selfie that says, hey, this is me, how can I get resources? I need help. Connect me in this part of the world. Just hashtag empathy epidemic. Hashtag empathy epidemic, and we'll make sure that you can get that. If you don't know how to spell empathy or epidemic like I do, or don't rather, you'll have to Google both those words, put them together with a hashtag, and you'll get there. But I really love what we as, I guess, people have the opportunity in front of us. I just want to close with a couple thoughts for those that are struggling with suicide, with depression, with anxiety. It's all rooted in the lie that you're alone. It's all rooted in the isolation factor. If you work with students, or you're wondering how you can make a difference in this, I guess, suicidal rate that's in our nation currently, let's start an empathy epidemic, and let's be generous with our time. Let's be present and accountable to people around us, to where we are constantly reaching out with proximity into their life. I want to just say something specifically today, because I can't get away from it, but there are people that are suffering from depression, or let's say simply suicide, as we're talking about suicide this month for suicide prevention, because someone else has committed suicide. I've noticed that when someone takes their life, then all of the other lives that are left in that wake, it's almost like it's a domino effect. Does that make sense? And I just want to say to anybody that's out there tonight watching this, or when you come across this, and there's a suicide in your community or in your circle of friends, that is not the answer for you. And it's okay. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to want them back. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to deal with all of those things. But it's not okay for you to take yourself out of the story because they ended theirs in that way. I had a very close friend, and he has a first name and a last name that just took his life. It was a brother of a very close friend who just got married. I don't want to name names, but this person named first name this and last name this just recently took their life. And the wake of this in the family has just been spinning around them today. And they're actually on their way to another part of the country on a big move. And on Instagram, I got a notification that this person, same first name, same last name of the boy that just ended their own life, followed me. As they're dealing with the wake of this, and I get a text about how it's been tough because dealing with this death has just asked us to answer all these questions. And it was like the God of the universe just was winking, was just dropping this in my lap just to say, hey, it's okay to miss them because they're always going to be with you. Mm-hmm. It's the new normal that I think we need to embrace. And I just want to tell anybody who's lost someone to suicide recently or in the past, they're always going to be with you. And it's going to be the new normal that God will get you through and that you can become something greater than even what you think was in that moment that they lost hope in. You can become a light because of that story. I couldn't get away from that there was somebody going to tune in tonight that lost somebody from suicide and they're thinking about taking their own life because they miss them. It's okay to miss them. They're always going to be with you. But how we respond to that is how we can resolve that in ourselves. And there's light that will come from it. Keep reading that story because it's unfolding in you now. You pick up where they left off and you make sure that people are not alone as they felt alone. And I just would add, it's really not it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Tim, I want to just kind of sum up a metaphor for people as we close, because I like to package things in a metaphor when we're talking about suicide. In a pool, like a body of water that you would swim in or a lake. Do you swim, Tim?
I can swim. Do I swim? Yes.
Okay. Do you have like a normal swimsuit, or do you wear like a really not appropriate swimsuit?
I'm going to leave your audience wondering. I have a normal.
Okay, good. I'm just hoping it's a normal one, because when I go to like the Caribbean or whatever, like I just got back from my 40th birthday party. There was people that were wearing swimming suits that were more like rubber bands. You shouldn't be wearing that, man. I'm telling you.
I don't have that much, self-confidence in what I look like in that suit. So no.
Okay, good. Because we could do another whole seminar on swimsuits, but. The idea of a pool, I want really to kind of equip everybody with this metaphor so they can use it and they can kind of bring it into the fold. I've been thinking about this like a pool. You drowned in a pool by being alone, or because nobody sees you struggle. I mean, the only way that you're going to really drown in a pool is if there's no lifeguard and there's nobody around you. I understand metaphorically we could unpack this, but you drown in a pool because you're alone or nobody hears your cry for help. This is a challenge to me. To the alone that's swimming in the pool, beware of this. These feelings of aloneness, this next step is the drowningness. The feelings of aloneness that we got to get a hold of, this soundtrack in your mind, these things that are playing. The next step is drowning. The first step is being alone. The next step is drowning. You got to ask for help. You got to call out to the people that are around you. You got to make sure that you ask for the lifeguard that's in your life. And there are lifeguards in your life that they need to know you need help. That there's lifeguards that actually care, that they're listening, that they're not going to hurt you, that they're not going to wound you like you were in the past, if that makes sense. You got to extend yourself, because it's really where the danger starts. So beware of the empty pool, in a sense. When you're dealing with your own self and your own thoughts of aloneness, beware of the empty pool. When you feel alone, it's like you're in the pool all alone. And the next step is your head goes underneath the water and it's hard to get out. You got to call out. You got to keep getting into the place where you're asking for that help. Metaphorically, then flipping that idea, alone happens when we no longer hear people. So I want to tell everybody I just want to say all of you are in a pool. We're all in this big pool of humanity. And some of you need to be lifeguards. So start getting your head up and start looking around and start being someone who has empathy, yes, but sympathy in action. If you see those signs of someone struggling at the water, don't make it someone else's problem. Get in the water, swim over to them. Invade that personal space in the water. I mean, it's always awkward when you're in a pool, if there's that personal space where like someone's foot can casually brush you. But if someone comes up and they're like swimming like right here and they're talking to you about their day and you're in a pool and it's just that is an uncomfortable feeling that you have someone this close. This is what happens when Tim and I go swimming together. Tim is right here talking to me. I'm like, Tim, can you step back? This is an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And your breath is minty, but this is really, the point is you got to look around because there's people that could be struggling. Get in the water, invade that personal space. Don't get so busy with your own masks and floats and snorkels and chicken fights that you forget to see, that kid over there, or that student over there, or that dad, or that wounded warrior, or that senior citizen, or that person where they're right on the edge of the stairs, or they're right on the ledge where the drop off is, or they're in the place where they think there is no lifeguard. Don't forget to notice, these people. I just would really frame up this conversation around suicide is it happens when we feel like we're alone in a pool, or when we as the lifeguards stop looking for people that are struggling. That's when people drown. That's when people take their own life, when they buy the lie that they're alone in the pool. And that personal space, invading with time. And suicide, we can change it. We don't have to have another 10 years where we look at this and go, it's another 72% rise. The only way that we're going to change it is getting back to the reality that Timm proposes to all of us in this book, is that alone does suck. It's not God's intention, and we all feel it at times, but there is an answer. There is a solution. It's called an empathy epidemic, and we start putting our sympathy in action. We start asking for help. We start speaking words about ourselves that are true, and we start invading that personal space with time and energy to close in the gap, to really speak the words that we are not alone, that you are not alone, that I am not alone, that rescue is possible. You don't have to drown, but you have to ask for help. Others don't have to drown, but you have to see them in the pool. I really appreciate, Timm, you coming by. You got anything you want to add where people can find more about, I guess, Waves, the next steps on how you can help them, where they can get the book, any promotions that you're running with it? Because I think it's groundbreaking, especially for leaders to take their students through and students to take themselves through. You got any thoughts on that?
Well, everything that you just mentioned can be discovered at timothyeldred.com. And so you can find all of my books there. And if you, for your listeners, Eric, if they use the promo code AXE, AXE. For any of my books at timothyeldred.com in the store, 20% off right off the top. And so they can do that right now. I set that up because I believe in what you're doing with them. I want them to hear, and again, so if they're interested in waves for youth or Alone Sucks or any of the above, just reach out to me on social media, direct message me. I will get back to you. And so, but I want them to hear this, that tomorrow needs you.
Yeah.
Tomorrow needs you. And then the person who doesn't think there's a tomorrow, they need you too.
Yeah.
And so, be present, be with, and don't try to be everywhere. And because you're going to miss all the opportunities to experience the great joy God's got for you in life already.
Yeah. So much gold in your perspective on how so much of the symptoms are all based in this nagging reality of being alone, how it's not really God's plan for us, how all of us feel it, how none of us are it, and at the same time, some real practical ways that someone who's struggling with it can dig themselves out, but someone who sees or is maybe watching someone who they think is struggling with it can really dig themselves in, because alone does suck, and you're not alone. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, for watching this. I want to thank all my ACTS students. There's so much more coming down the pike. All my ACTS supporters. There's just a handful of you. I would really ask that if you've ever thought about doing something that is about investing into this generation, contact me directly. There's a list of things that we're trying to accomplish that need prayer and also need provision. It just is the bottom line. Check out the webinar on communication, October 11th. Make sure that you use the code if you're not a student or a supporter of the ACTS Academy on theactsacademy.com. Swing away 10 for your first month on me. Those of you that shared the stream on Facebook Live, we will contact you, get your shipping address, and we will send you a print that I have painted for you. But I just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in. Make sure that you tune in next month. Make sure you check out Sammy's podcast, or the AXCast, really, the public and extended on that. And let's just all hope that maybe Tim, for the next time that we do this together, he'll have a better microphone that won't fall off his desk.
Everyone's got to have a memory, man.
I know. I love it. It makes you so real. Tim, I love you so much.
You think you'd never done this before. Love you too, Eric. Thanks so much for the conversation. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Yeah. Hey, man, let me close in prayer for those of you that are out there that are struggling tonight with suicide. I just want to say, hey, let me pray for you specifically, that the God of the universe would continue to invade your space. You didn't watch this by accident. You're not alone. Wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, start speaking the truth that the enemy doesn't want you to speak about yourself. I believe in the power of prayer. I want to pray for you and let the Holy Spirit do the work that I can't do, that Tim can't do, that the ACTS Academy will never do, but that he does. So, God, I just come to you and I just thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here with Tim in this place, with all of those that are be watching for different ways and different seasons and different realities, God. But for those specifically in this prayer, I just want to remember them and ask that you would continue to invade space, their space, close up the proximity from the inside out that's within them, the intangible things that we can't explain, the supernatural happenings where it is about what they feel, and it is about what that's transcendent, that they can't really put into words. Holy Spirit, I pray that you would do that for the down and out, for the rejected, for the people that have bought the lie that they're alone, that the student that's watching this, that's thinking about taking their own life. God, I pray that you would invade their space tonight, and they would keep flipping the pages, keep reading their story. Holy Spirit, do the work we can't do in the lives of students and soldiers and moms and dads and seniors and all of the different categories of humans that are dealing with this epidemic, this lie that they're alone, that they're isolated. Holy Spirit, God, I just pray that you'd send your Holy Spirit to remind them that they're not alone tonight, in a way that my words, that Tim's words fall drastically short.
And we just give you the honor, give you the glory. Thank you for all of it that you've given us. In your name, amen. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this live AxeCast webinar. Make sure you check out theaxeacademy.com for more details. And make sure you check out Timothy Eldred's website as well for books and resources. Use the promo code AXE to get 20% off everything in his store, including a pair of used swim trunks that he may put on just for charity, for fun.
We might auction those off just for more ACT students. Who knows?
Yeah, it's been crazy, man. I know we can cut the recording. I don't know if we're still recording or we're still going live, but if you are live, man, it's just been an absolute blast to see like the need for things. I don't know, when you had Waves started, it really was like this thing that just sort of took on its whole new.
Yeah, we just gave it away because the need was empowering and equipping. I mean, hey, you can make a difference. Just think about that. I mean, whether we're live here or not, it doesn't matter. Giving somebody purpose and speaking into their life, their potential.
Yeah,
it's just sometimes all the wind in their sail they need to like make it one more day. Well, not to imagine what that can grow and blossom into.
And that's been the struggle too for me with the Axe Academy, is that we, like Waves, where you just were started giving it away, and then it's like in all these countries and thousands and thousands of students. Right now I'm at this really fetal stage with Axe Academy where I've hired someone to help me run it because I need to be a dad and be present and speak and be a pastor and write and everything that I do. And there's cost involved in providing that. And then at the same time, we have a fee to be a part of Axe Academy, $100 a year, $10 a month. It's really minimal.
Yeah.
But if I had a couple donors or one or like 10 that just walked up to me and just said, hey, what does it cost to run this? And how can we help you grow this? I would love to make this whole thing free for people. Yeah. I'm just in that stage right now where we're charging as little as we can to see it grow. But man, that's really what I'm praying into, I guess, is that someone would come alongside of the Axe Academy and go, hey, here's a check. What do you need? We'll make it happen. Keep making this. This is going to change the world. You know what I mean? Like, or someone's world, maybe not the world, but let's say someone's world that changes the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, all it takes is that one young person or whoever your students are who believe in themselves to go, who knows where that's going to go? But I'm going to pray for that with you, because that's what we're doing at Waves. We just have enough people giving enough resources to make that available. And right now in 63 countries and 14,000 Waves groups or whatever, and that's on all estimation by the end of 2019, we're looking at 40,000. And if that's what we think we can do, that's not even putting God in the equation.
Yeah, one thing that
giving kids hope and training adults how to get out of their way.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed about the millennial generation, and those of if they're still listening, or if we're live, or if we cut this up, or I kind of hope we're still live. But the point is one. Oh, perfect, John. All right, we're still live. Hey, everybody, we didn't cut. You've been here. You listening to this. I'm glad I'm wearing a shirt. But the point is. I guess what I was going to say, Tim, is I've noticed that the millennial generation, it's almost like if they got a little skin in the game, it all of a sudden has like greater value. Yeah. I've actually thought about this is what I want to do if I find a few donors that want to come alongside with the Axe Academy and go, hey, we want to invest in this generation. I want to charge a student of the Axe Academy for the entire year, or like monthly, let's say $10 or $100, and then like send them an email and be like, somebody covered it.
Yeah.
Give the $100 that you just gave to feed a kid for 10 months, or you know what I mean? Like, I would love to be able to test the water of who's in, who's out. Because one thing I've noticed about information that's out there, and you know this with just what Waves does, is people can get information anywhere.
Anywhere.
My friend Alan Pastine, he's a pastor, he says they get revelation from people. And I love that part of Axe Academy where people can get information anywhere, but if they walk with a community of people, they actually get revelation. And so it's kind of fun to see who's in, who's out with just the almighty $10 bill. And then wouldn't that be amazing to be able to like refund that money and go, hey, thanks for being faithful with the Axe Academy for a year. By the way, this was all a test. You passed. Here's your $100 back. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh, I love it. Or give them the opportunity to say, I give you $100 back, or do you want to pay for the next student who couldn't do this? You know, but there is something about the investment part of it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my big audacious dream with Waves right now is that, and everyone thinks Waves is impossible. They've thought it was impossible since we began it. Ministry of youth, by youth, for youth, run by youth all across the world, students making all the decisions. And yes, we do have some generous individuals who contribute so that we can continue to train and equip and build new apps and all kinds of stuff. But we hear from students all the time. I got an email just about a week ago. Someone said, hey, we want to go to Haiti, and would Waves sponsor our trip to Haiti? Well, we don't have those kind of funds. We can't sponsor a group's trip to Haiti. But what I would like to say to thousands of students across the world is, if you all make a contribution of $5 or equivalent in your economy, and thousands of students are giving $5 a month, then it creates a pool or a fund of resources that every kid can say, hey, we are putting in a water well, or we're working with the homeless, or we're doing a sex trafficking thing. And so they can apply to receive funds from their peers. So it's not just ministry of youth, by youth, for youth, but doggone if this generation doesn't fund their own ministry. And people go, well, that can't happen. I'm like, don't say it can't happen.
Right.
Because students, this particular generation, will invest in what breaks their heart, or they will invest in like the Axe Academy for what sharpens the axe, so they can go do what they are passionate about doing.
Yeah.
Except to give those opportunities. People think that's nuts, but I think your idea is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all a process, man. Trying to be faithful. I'm just thankful, and I turned 40, and I want the next 40 years of my life to be about not what am I doing, but how am I help people do what they're called to do. I just sent a quick email to John, the executor of this stream, amazing talent. But I was just going to ask him via email, and I could just publicly, because I know he's listening. Were there any comments or questions that came across on the Facebook page that you noticed? I didn't ask for any, and I certainly wasn't checking Facebook while Timm was talking, out of respect for him, but also I wanted to be there and present. Is there anything that came in that we need to address or talk to briefly? I'm just checking, Timm. Yeah, that's a good question. I just noticed, I just pulled this up for Roberta Sanchez. How can you be a lifeguard when they don't want you? Timm, how would you answer that question for Roberta? I'll take a swing, but how can you be a lifeguard for someone, from my metaphor, when they don't want you to be there, or they don't want you?
Well, there are a couple of realities that we can't just gloss over. The other people who drown in a pool are the people trying to save the drowning victim. So quite often you hear the news story about the person was drowning. Someone jumped in to save them. They rescued them, but the rescuer drowned. There's a couple things to be aware of, in my opinion, for Roberta's question. As desperate as you are to want to save somebody who doesn't want to be saved, you also have to know whether or not you actually have the ability to do it. There are people who require some trained professional medical help. And so there are times that people are at the bottom that you might not have the capacity mentally, intellectually, let alone from a professional standpoint, to help them without losing your own life or have them drag you down.
Yeah.
to the bottom as well. You have to be careful because lonely people and desperate people can sometimes be dangerous. And I'm not saying so avoid them. I'm saying find somebody else. Know when to refer, Roberta. They might not want your help, and it might not be because it's you, but it might be because it's not the help they need. And so look for somebody else and ask a professional in your community that question. But there's another part to that. There are just times in desperate situations. It doesn't matter if they want your help or not. I mean, if they're that desperate,
Mm-hmm.
let me give a story, and it's going to sound really harsh. It's probably going to sound really harsh. There are some people that you won't be able to help. You won't be able to help. And they're not typically the ones that are screaming for help. You didn't even notice. I have a friend who's a counselor in Arkansas. And we had a situation going on a few years ago in our house, and I was calling to ask him how to take care of it. And he said, let him go. I said, let him go? I can't let him go. I care too much to let him go. He says, no, you have to care enough to just say, hey. He said, let me give you an illustration. My phone rang at 3 o'clock in the morning a couple weeks ago, and a guy called and said, hey, I just called to let you know, man, this is the night I'm going to end my life. And he said, 3 things have just happened. He said, number one, you just woke me up from a dream that included Halle Berry. And so you and I are going to have words next time we talk because it was a great dream, number one. Number two, if you make this decision to end your life, that's a pretty permanent choice. Life's about choices. Choices have consequences. Consequences produce chaos. If you end your life tonight, you're going to see Jesus face to face, and that's okay because he's been wanting to have a few words with you. Number two. Number three, I promise that I'll say nice words at your funeral and eat potato salad when it's all said and done with. And he hung up the phone on him. And I said, wouldn't you go over to their house? He said if he was going to kill himself, 9 times out of 10, not 10 times out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, he wouldn't have called me. And so what did I give him that he really wanted? Tough love, which is not really tough love. It's just, there's no such thing as tough love. It's just love. And it's so hard to do. It doesn't mean he didn't check on him the next morning, but if he was going to probably end his life that night, he wouldn't have screamed out for help. So Roberta, if someone's screaming for help, they're actually, it's like accountability with a kid. It's like putting a cow in like a chute, you're pushing them towards the cattle chute, and they're bouncing off the sides, and they hate it, they don't like it, but you're going to push them there anyway. That's what accountability is. It's the same thing when someone tells you, I don't want your help. Just because they tell you they don't want their help doesn't mean they're not really saying they want your help. Maybe they don't know how to tell you, I need your help. Don't give up on them. Just don't give up on them.
I would say, how do you be a lifeguard when they don't want you? I think there's a couple, to Roberta's question, there's a couple ways to look at that, relationally on what are we talking about for the person? Is this a father to a son? Is this a youth pastor to a student? Is this a teacher? Is this peer-to-peer? There's all these different, I guess, categories or, hypotheticals when we're talking about who's the person that's drowning and who's the lifeguard we're speaking of. And so I would need some clarity on that. But Roberta, what I would say is continue to be there for people when you may feel that they don't want you. Because love, by definition, from Scripture, is patient and it's long-suffering and it holds no record of wrong. And it continues to walk through it continues to stand by. It continues to wait in the wings. It continues to be there and not be there. It continues to hold on to hope. And that sometimes is not always easy, depending on the situation. But when someone doesn't want you, sometimes what they don't want is maybe light to shine in on their darkness because of a different perspective, or because they're maybe ashamed, or because of 100 other reasons. But all I would say to you is, if you're asking me the question, what do you do when someone doesn't want you? How can you be that lifeguard? I would say that you become a love guard. you become a person who guards the definition of love, and you respond to them in that moment of their life that is this slice of time appropriately with love and grace and truth and justice. Because a lot of times their definition of love, or their definition of the gospel, or on God's love for them, will be on example or on display through you in this one little slice of time that they're in, when God sees their life on this huge, huge timeline. So be this love guard, and guard the definition of love, even when people don't want you. Because it's not always going to be easy to be light. Sometimes people don't want the light, especially shown on them or around them or in them. It reminds them of all of the things. That's how I'd answer that question. There was another one I want to just briefly touch upon that I really thought was interesting. Kylie, she asked, hey, real quick, there's a bunch of people still watching this, and so we can end here. We've gone way over time, but I love what Dawn just said. Love is often simply being with, being with them.
It's the presence thing we talked about earlier.
Yeah. So I get it. There's that, but Kylie asked this question, and I know, Tim, this is you're an expert in this too. Do you have any thoughts or tips or suggestions on someone who's dealing with like post-traumatic stress, that's dealing with just their own, trauma, if you will, when it comes to this nagging feeling of aloneness? You got any thoughts on how aloneness contributes to like something like PSD? Did you ever notice a direct connection with that, other than the example that I used loosely earlier in my own experience?
Well, I was just with a friend last week in Florida who served multiple tours and was blown up and been struggling with PTSD for a long time. And we had this conversation, and I just sent him a copy of the book about 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on PTSD, but he is, because he's going through it.
Right.
And he said, and it's just as hard as it possibly is. He just had to go back to your illustration about the band of brothers. When he wasn't alone, he had a band of brothers. When he got out and dealing with all that he suffered through, whatever that post-traumatic stress is, he just remembered. And sometimes it is remembering that there was a time when I was surrounded by people who cared for me. So he just put himself back within that band of brothers. Again, there are times when people go, no, I'm done. I give up. I can't do that. And the pain is too great. But quite often there's just a glimpse of remembrance that takes us back to say, I will seek out somebody who will listen. That's what he has done to do it. And he said that's the only way that it's worked for him, is to make sure he surrounds himself with people.
Right.
Again, I think that's the theme that we're going around here, is surround yourself with people. Just be with.
And there's so many layers to that. I got a pastor friend that just made a comment I want to highlight. Very smart theologian. He gets hangry real easy. But he's got practical application, and sometimes I got to skin it. But he came up, he just put a little comment here. He just said, hey, about the lifeguard piece. Lifeguards stand, and Roberta, lifeguards, I want you to hear this, Roberta. Lifeguards stand watch whether they're wanted or not by those that they serve. They're still on the podium standing there, looking, searching, waiting for that moment when they feel like the person's life is endangered to themselves. I've just been really unpacking that pool metaphor. Hey, Lynette, I got to honor everybody's time here. It's 8:48. We've been going since 7:00 p.m. Central. I just say this: if you just tuned into this and you want to watch this Acts Cast webinar with my guest Timothy Eldred on suicide prevention and this theme, and really cause of it that we've wrestled through with alone and being alone, you can watch this on theaxeacademy.com in its entirety. Use the code SWINGAWAY10. You'll get a free month for the Axe Academy. You can watch this whole Axe Cast for free using the code SWINGAWAY10 at theaxeacademy.com. The other thing that you need to know is once you get into some of the content, go over to Timm's website, timothyeldred.com, and use the code AXE, and you get 20% off anything he's got there with curriculum and books about this idea that alone sucks. Lynette said something, and I say all of that to say this, Lynette. The question that you just asked, having lost someone to suicide, how do you deal with the emotions of them being gone? We talked about this. In fact, I felt like I needed to say that for you, Lynette. So I got this crazy Instagram story. Go back and watch that, Lynette. And if you can't get in, message us. We'll send you the link of this video. But I just want to conclude, again, now that we're still going live, we've concluded this AXECast webinar at least twice.
4 or 5 times, yeah, at least.
We've had 4 or 5 microphones dropped. Not mine once, for the record. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Watch it, share it. You can get it later. I hope that we, as a people, as leaders, as students, as communicators of hope, as bearers of light, as people that are looking to make good in the world, continue to use the phrase that I am not alone to ourselves, but also remind those that feel isolated, that have been put in a place, whether circumstantially or intentionally by their own doings, where they are in the valley of the shadow of alone, where we keep speaking to the heart that they are not alone, that we're in this together. Because alone definitely does suck, but it doesn't have to be that way. It is not that way. We are not built for that way. Let's do something about it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the AXECast on this webinar. Tune in next month, October 11th, as we kill the speaker and unlock the order. Thanks to my guest, Mr. Timothy Eldred. Thanks to Jonathan Horseman for putting this amazing stream together for everybody. And everybody that listened and everybody that shared, appreciate you so much. Have a good night.